Hey everybody, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about John chapter 5. In particular, some of the things that jump out to me in this chapter and maybe try to help you understand or relate a little better to it. You're noticing probably now that we've slowed down the pace and given you a little bit less work. I'm glad that they're allowing us to do that. It also, I'm hoping, will give you some time to really focus in on the Bible when you do put your time into it. But in John 5, we have Jesus healing the paralyzed man at the Pool of Bethsaida. And around this pool, at least some translations and some folklore traditions say, is around the pool, all of these invalid and paralyzed people would lay until an angel would come and stir the water, and then they would try to, the first one to get to the water would be healed. The ESV translation doesn't include that, because in the earliest manuscripts it's not found, but historically we can say that at least there was some reason to argue or believe that this was tradition or common of the time. And Jesus shows up there, and there's all of these people that are sick and all of these people in need, and he heals one person. It's probably the most confusing story in the gospel to me, because almost every other story, it will say they brought all of the sick of that region, or all of the demon-possessed, or everybody who was jacked up, and Jesus healed them all, or Jesus delivered them all, or Jesus cast out all the demons. But in this story, Jesus shows up where they're all already sick. He only heals one man. I usually say this, that if I had been Jesus on that day, I probably would have been like the ultimate warrior in WWF way back when, before any of you were born. And I'd be running down like I was coming down the entrance, high-fiving all the sick people and healing them all. Well, why? Because power, the idea of having it, we think, well, if I had $1 million, I'd buy a Lambo and I would do this and I would do that. Or if I had this, or I had that gift, or if I had that talent, or if I could run this fast or jump that high, this is what I would do. But power is not power unless it's rooted in authority. And Jesus recognized that his power was rooted in the authority that was given to him from God. And so we find in John 5 him making statements like, I can do nothing of my own accord. Another way to say it would be, I can do nothing of my own initiative. Jesus, who is God, walks on earth as man. And in John 5, he makes it very clear to all of us that the miracles he's performing and the works he is doing as man and out of reliance on his Father. He's not doing them because he is God. He is doing them because of his relationship with God. And that's why he becomes this perfect example for us. That's why it says in Hebrews that he can relate to us. He's a priest, a high priest who can relate to the struggles of our humanity. Why? Because he himself became like a human. Philippians tells us that he emptied himself and took on the posture of a servant, even being made into the likeness of men. And so what we find is Jesus is there amongst all of the sick and all of the broken, and he only heals this one man. And in healing the one man, he still creates all of this pandemonium. And by the second half of the chapter, we find that Jesus is having a discussion with the Pharisees, and he's really letting them know that if they really loved God, and if they really loved Moses and the scriptures and truth, that clearly they would have received him. Because he's not just testifying about himself, but God is testifying about him, and the works he's doing testify about him, and the miracles testify about him. And not just that, John the Baptist came before him and testified about him. And yet, they still cannot receive Jesus as the Messiah. He says this in verse 30 of chapter 5. I think it's worth highlighting here. He says, I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just because I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. I can do nothing on my own, and what I hear, basically Jesus is going, I hear what I should say and what I should do. I see what I should do, I hear what I should say and how I should judge. Why am I highlighting that? Some of you have the idea that God is out to get you, or that God is waiting for you to screw up so he can pull a lightning bolt out and zap you, or bring some terrible issue, or some pain, or some tragedy. And yet, we just read in the last chapter that Jesus shows up at the pool, or not the pool, but at the well, during the 6th hour, what would have been noon, at the heat of the day, to meet with a Samaritan woman who is a loose woman who's been around the block a little bit. And Jesus doesn't judge her. He doesn't shame her. He actually tells her in more clear terms he's the Messiah than he even says to Nicodemus, who's part of the religious elite. If Jesus can only say or only judge according to what he hears, then the way he treats the woman at the well should make all of us feel comforted. Because he's not coming to judge you in a way to try to harm you, hurt you, or shame you. Matter of fact, he's coming to heal you, to restore, to encourage, to strengthen. The only people Jesus ever rebukes brutally in the Bible are those who think they are okay without him. He rebukes those who think they're the religious elite. He rebukes those who think they're better than others because of the way they perform their religious acts. He doesn't rebuke the woman at the well. He doesn't rebuke the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. He doesn't go after the weak ones and the sinners. He doesn't go after Matthew for being a tax collector. Instead, he goes to his home and he eats with him. And the Pharisees come and they say that he is he's a sinner, he's a glutton, he's friends with tax collectors. He's a drunkard. They say all sorts of things about him. Why? Because he loves the broken and the destitute well. And so as you read through this, I want you to consider two things. Is it possible that God is not giving you the answer to your prayer because you might misuse it? The power or opportunity or blessing that you're asking for, you may not use it the way God intends it to be used. And so God's withholding, or he's not answering your prayers, or maybe he's holding things off because he doesn't want to give you something that you're going to get in trouble with. See, the Father could give Jesus the power to heal the way he did because Jesus was never seeking his own glory. And maybe God wants to do some things for you and give things to you and bless you in ways that are profound. But he has to wait because you don't know how to steward that inside your heart. And so maybe it's an act of mercy that's making it seem as though God is distant or God's not answering your prayers. So I challenge you, go back and ask, are there some things in me, God, I need a car. Well, are you going to use that car wisely? Are you going to use it to pick up friends and go to church, or to pick up your girlfriend and go park? What are you going to do? How are you going to use what God gives to you? And I think that's the first part of John 5 that really speaks to us. But then later in John 5, we have this aspect, probably one of my favorite. I only judge by what I hear. And then we look at the life of Jesus and we realize how kind he is to our humanity. If you're out there and you think Jesus isn't for you, you're wrong. You think you've screwed up too much and Jesus isn't going to back you up, you're wrong. God's desire has always been to cure the cause of destruction in man's life, which is sin. He's not angry. His wrath is not being held at bay. He has always desired to be kind and gracious to our failing and porous identity as just men. David said like this, he remembers that we are but dust. So God is always looking to be merciful, to be kind, to be gracious. And if maybe you're watching this and you struggle with that, as we go through Easter weekend, I hope that you are encouraged when you come into this video and realize Jesus is for you. He's not against you. And his desire is that you would walk with him and walk like him and be able to be trusted with the greatness of the kingdom and all that comes with it. Anyhow, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're enjoying this break. I hope you're using it wisely, using your time wisely, spending time with family and really deepening your relationship with Jesus, especially during this Easter season. Anyhow, God bless. Have a great day.